Ciao to everyone. My name is Marco Amici. I'm currently one of the editors at Oscar Mondadori, the imprint of Mondadori that has published all of Agatha Christie's works. I have translated a couple of short stories, one being The Woman of Knight and the other being Poirot and the Regatta Mystery. I've edited two Christie short stories omnibus collections, one dedicated to Hercule Poirot and the other one dedicated to Miss Marple. Since 2017, together with Davide Astegiano, which is also my colleague at Mondadori, I've created Radical Ginge, a literary blog where we write about our recent reads and book events we attend. Also, on Radical Ginge, we've always had a focus on Christie, her works, the theme of her works, and the history about how her name became so popular here in Italy. Today, I will try and condense the tumultuous journey of Christie's legacy here in Italy from the very beginning up to today. And I guess to start this journey, I must tell you about one very exciting adventure involving Agatha Christie, Max Mallowan, Milan Central Station, and a train that was hard to catch. In 1930, returning home after one of her trips to the Middle East, Agatha Christie stopped at Milan to catch the train that would have brought her back to England. She tells us about it in her autobiography, titled in Italian La mia vita. At Milan, we had an adventure. The train was late. Max suggested we should go on and buy some oranges, so we walked along to a fruit stall, then walked back to the platform again. I suppose about 5 minutes had elapsed, but there was no train at the platform. We were told it had left. We looked at each other in dismay. A senior railway official then came to our aid. He suggested that we hire a powerful car and race the train. He thought we would have a sporting chance of catching it at Domodossola. A journey rather like one on the cinema then began. First, we were ahead of the train. Then, the train was ahead of us. Now, we felt despair. The next moment, we felt comfortably superior as we went through the mountain roads and the train popped in and out of tunnels, either ahead of or behind us. Finally, we reached Domodossola, about 3 minutes after the train. This is just one of the countless memories and anecdotes regarding Italy and the Italian people that Christie reveals in her books and in her autobiographies. Clearly for her and her generation, Italy was an exotic land full of beauty, from the paintings and marbles at the Uffizi to the stunning landscape to the Dolomiti, from the Italian Riviera to the incredible frescoes in Pisa. The same passion Agatha Christie showed to the country, Italy showed it back to her. If you were to look at the Radio Corriere, the equivalent of the BBC Radio Times, from the 1932, you might have catch a glimpse of a little advert marketing the I romanzi gialli series, a fortnightly publication of detective fiction. Ogni fascicolo, un romanzo completo a una lira. That's what it says. There, in bold letters, the title of their last publication, Un delitto misterioso a stile and court. This advert is the first occurrence that I have found of Christie works being published in Italian, but it's not the first time that Agatha Christie's name has ever been published on a newspaper in Italy. And I bet you can guess what was the first occurrence. The arrival on the Italian market of her first novel, The Mysterious Affair at Styles, written in 1916 as a result of a bet with her sister Madge, was foreshadowing one of the main issues of Agatha Christie's works in translation, the differences in titles and the difficulty of having a proper chronology of her works. It was called Un delitto misterioso a stile and court, a mysterious murder at Stile and Court, and as you can see, it's not Styles, it's Stilen, and I really don't know why did they change the name. This version was translated by L. Graziani, which unfortunately we do not know the first name. It was published, as I said, in 1932. This same edition, was followed 1 day later by another edition of the same novel translated by Renato Iacchia for Little Grafica Press, with another title, Il delitto di Style Court, romanzo, The Style Court Murder, a novel. It doesn't end here though. Just few days after this, a third edition of Styles sees the light. This time, the title reads Il misterioso affare Styles, translator unknown for the Alpha Elite editions. This affair thickens because during the same year, 2 other publishers print 2 other different translations of Styles, one called Morte Misteriosa a Style Court, edited by G. Carabba, translated by Maria Napolitano, and the other titled Il misterioso affare di Styles, for Argo Press, in what probably was a bootleg edition. Then, in 1934, in a not surprising turn of event, The Mysterious Affare Styles gets another one edition, this time with the title Un delitto a stile in court, by Mediolano Press, by an unknown translator. Just like many others of Christie's novels, The Mysterious Affare Styles had a very troublesome publishing history. The argument is vast and worthy of a novel of its own, but it describes just how much Christie's stories were loved by the Italian public, in a time and a place where reading a foreign novel could mean going against the dictates of the fascist government. And just imagine that in the 30s, many countless editions of this same novel had appeared on the market in Italy. This means that there was really want by the people of reading those gialli stories, as we call it in Italy. Luckily, today we got a new edition, and it's called Poirot a Style Court, Poirot et Styles. It's edited by Mondadori. The translation is by Diana Fonticoli. And just for the 100th anniversary of Agatha Christie stories, it was published comprehending also the edited chapter that the original publisher of the novel decided to scrap. As we stated before, this was just the beginning of the troublesome journey of Christie's work in Italy. During the fascist government, the Minkulpop, the Ministry of Popular Culture, had banned the depictions of Italian men and women from books and movies, especially if they were from a foreign country. This is clear in Murder on the Orient Express, published in Italy for the first time in 1935 with the title Orient Express, translated by Alfredo Pitta, published by Mondadori. We are all familiar with the story of the evil Samuel Ratchet that gets murdered on the sumptuous Orient Express. Hercule Poirot is asked to find out who done it, and, in a very early turn of events, Ratchet's true identity is discovered. His name was not Ratchet, but Cassetti. As it sounds, it was Italian. This particular fact, he being Italian, was against the fascist propaganda. No Italian man or woman could be a killer, a murderer, a monster. Also, there could be no suicide in those kind of novels. And you'll see why this is important later. That's how Cassetti became O'Hara, of Irish descent, whilst Foscarelli, an Italian-American, became Pereira, from Portuguese descendant. This is not the only occurrence in which we see manipulation of the text. In 1935 Italian translation, we can't find a trace of when Monsieur Bouc and Poirot discuss about the Italian inclination to quarrel and to get into fights. And this kind of inclination, sometimes told by Christie as the hot-blooded Italian or the hot-blooded Spanish people, they rarely come up in those early translations. As I said, this is not the only Christie title that has seen these kind of changes. We actually had two different endings for Death on the Nile, which I'm not going to spoil, neither the original one nor the other two from the other two different Italian translations. Luckily, Mondadori, the current publishing house for Agatha Christie, has been amending the oldest translations, updating them to match the original source text. These examples of censorship, a censorship that shut down the Gialli Mondadori series, from 1941 to 1946, and we must imagine the Gialli Mondadori series the equivalent of the Collins Crime Club, this shutdown revealed not only the way the fascist propaganda did not want to see Italian people portrayed, but mainly how Italian and Italy were perceived from the outside. Even though Gialli Mondadori was shut down, the editors and translator were still up to date with everything in regards of Christie's output. Very few documents of the era have reached us today due to different accidents and fire that destroyed the various Mondadori archives. But in the midst of what is left on the backstage of Mondadori's publication process, there is an evaluation of the novel And Then There Were None, written by Enrico Piceni. Enrico Piceni was one of the main men behind the Giallo Mondadori, together with Alberto Tedeschi and many more, and one of the many translators who gave Christie an Italian voice. His evaluation, strangely enough, is quite negative, having seen that the plot of And Then There Were None clearly reminded him of Manning and Barrow's novel, The Invisible Host, that Mondadori published just before the government ban. Luckily, he changed his mind, and Then There Were None reached the Italian bookshelves in 1946, with the title E alla fine non rimase nessuno. The choice for this title won't be analyzed here because it will take more than 20 minutes to be told. Unfortunately, though, to this day, we do not know who translated it for the first edition. We can assume it was Alfredo Pitta that translated it, because he was one of the prominent translators together with Enrico Piceni of those early Christie works. But on the same book, I've got the first edition, you can see it here, it doesn't state his name. So, to this day, this is a mystery. But luckily, today it is available in a new translation by Lorenzo Flabbi. As you might have understood, Christie was always the rage here in Italy, even though early on her works might have caused a bit of chaos, not only for her main countless versions, but also because of censorship. Here and there we see Italy coming up in Agatha Christie's works and records of her life. We do have glimpses of the fascist era in the 1930s and the 1940s, one above all being Triangles of Road, one of those examples when you can actually see how Italians were portrayed. It was published in 1936, and during those times, Rhodes was under the Italian and fascist government. We have many records of Christie traveling to and from Italy in her autobiography, and we also have a little report of almost an encounter of the fifth kind that happened during one of her travels. What did surprise me was the amount of passes that were made as soon as I was in the slightly equivocal position of being separated from or having divorced a husband. One is never too old to be insulted. On the other hand, it may sometimes for times on complication. In one case, with an Italian. I brought it on myself by not understanding Italian conventions. He asked me if I found the noise of the coaling of the boat kept me awake at night. And I said no, because my cabin was on the starboard side away from the quay. Oh, he said, I thought you had a cabin 33. Oh no, I said, mine's an even number, 68. That was surely an innocent enough conversation from my point of view. I did not realize that to ask the number of your cabin was the convention by which an Italian asked if he might visit you there. Nothing more was said, but some time after midnight, my Italian appeared. A very funny scene ensued. I did not speak Italian. He spoke hardly any English, so we both argued in furious whispers in French. I expressing indignation, he also expressing indignation, but of a different kind. This proceeded for some time, every now and then rising heatedly, until I hushed him down. I urged him hungrily to go away. He insisted that he should stay. In the end, his indignation rose to the point where it became greater than mine, and I began apologizing to him for not realizing that his question had been in effect a proposition. I got rid of him at last, still injured, by finally accepting that I was not the experienced woman of the world he had thought. I also explained to him, which seemed to calm him down even more, that I was English, and therefore frigid by nature. He condoled with me on this, and so his honor, was satisfied. But jokes aside, Italy and the Italian people have been prominent in many of her works, since her first publications. Let's just think of The Adventure of the Italian Nobleman, published in 1923, or the many Italians described with the term dago, a derogatory term that popped up in her early thrillers and spy stories, such as The Secret of Chimney. Or what about Maria and Geronimo, two Italian servants that helped Miss Nicolettis in her youth hostel in I Corridori Doc, which once translated in Italian as Poirot si annoia, meaning Poirot is bored. The long list of characters, we might even include the strange Mr. Paravicini, with his Italian-sounding surname. He was from Three Blind Mice and the Mousetrap, the weird little old man that seems to freak out all the guests at Monkswell Manor. And also, we must not forget that the same Miss Jane Marple that lived at St. Mary Mead in the prime of her life was sent to Florence to a finishing school. If we have to focus on the landscapes of her works, we do see Italy pop up quite a while. Pisa and its cemetery appears in the Labor of Hercule, or even the Dolomiti, the chain of mountains, the hideout of one of the Big Four, and today is the home of a walking path named after Agatha Christie. But Christie's fame and Italy are not bound to ink and paper. We do know that since she started writing for the theatre, there have been many productions of her works, even for the television, here on the Italian soil. The script for And Then There Were None stage play was published in Italy in 1947, translated by Enrico Raggio, right after the Italian translation of the novel, and it became quite a success, quite a big one. In 1952, a television version of the play was staged by RAI, the Radio Televisione Italiana, the equivalent of the BBC, making it amongst the first TV production adaptations of Christie's works in Europe and one of the first adaptation and production for the TV for And Then There Were None, even though Germany might have come first to this. Same thing for The Hollow, which reached Italy in 1953 thanks to Ada Salvatore, another great translator, that together with Enrico Piceni translated, amongst many other novels, Gone with the Wind. The Hollow, strangely enough, was kept as the title, which today has been changed and is called Poirot e la Salma, which means Poirot and the Body. Then we have the case of Christie's theatre magnus opus, The Mousetrap. The earliest Italian version of the Mousetrap translation is dated 1953. It was published as Tre topolini ciechi, Three Blind Mice, and was translated by Ada Salvatore. It appeared for the first time on Il Dramma, a theatre magazine printed in Turin. The whole archive of Il Dramma has been scanned and it is available online. That's how I got hold of it, and I realized what I had in front of me. This translation, that clearly was done on an earlier draft of Christie's Mousetrap, when the play was still called Three Blind Mice, hence the title in Italian, Tre topolini ciechi, it's probably the only publication of the play to include the prologue involving the two blue-collar working classmen that had been scrapped from the script. This is quite the finding that raises so many questions in regard on how the Italian market has put his hands on his very early first draft. A mystery that probably will never find a solution. Together with the theatre, radio was another medium to get the Christie treatment, even in Italian, with many of the radio dramas getting a translation. One above all, that still can be heard today because it's available on the Rai radio website, is Personal Call, titled in Italian Chiamata personale per il signor Brent. I must not forget cinema. The first very movie adaptation of a Christie story, and I'm sorry for my German pronunciation, Die Abenteuer GmbH, an adaptation of The Secret Adversary, starred Carlo Aldini, a very prominent Italian actor of the silent era. Carlo Aldini was also known in Italy as a boxer, a wrestler, and a long jumper. I think I should mention the strangest thing I managed to dig out during the research I did to put together this video. I knew that in 1980s, Rai, the Italian television, did some theatre-to-screen versions of Christie's most famous plays, but I never imagined that we Italians had our own TV Poirot. Here is Giulio Girola, in the only time that an Italian actor has dressed the Poirot clothes for the TV, even though he clearly looks more like Lord Peter Wimsey than the bombastic Belgian detective. Giulio Girola was very famous for his work on the stage. For his TV debut, he decided to work on an adapted version of Christie's Alibi. This version aired in 1957, but unfortunately we do not have any recording of it. It's fun though to see that even though many years have passed between the end of the war and this version, and still we find some characters' names to be translated, which was usual back in the 30s and the 40s. In here you can see that Roger Ackroyd becomes Ruggero Ackroyd. Many more examples could be done of incredible influences that Christie had on Italy and its people. Here Christie is revered as the Regina del Giallo, the Queen of Crime. As soon as a strange crime happens, the newspapers are bound to describe it as Di Cristiana Memoria, reminiscing of Christie's works. Many Italian directors and screenwriters have turned to Christie to pay her tribute or to find inspiration. I won't say many titles because I don't want to spoil them, but the famous examples are Pupi Avati, with his lesser-known work Tutti defunti tranne i morti, and the famous Dario Argento, that uses one of Christie's most controversial plot devices for one of his movies, Tenebre, starring Anthony Franciosa and a then unknown Veronica Lario, which, in a strange turn of event, was to later marry Silvio Berlusconi. To this day, theatre stage production of The Mousetrap, The Spiderweb, Witness for the Prosecution, and many others of Christie's plays to a full house audience every single time. Her novels are reprinted every single year, never going out of stock. and they are going to be read during the long Italian summers, on the beaches or in the mountains. Every reader in Italy has at least one of her books in her home, and her stories live on thanks to the TV series that have been aired and rerun during the year here in Italy. Luckily now, there's going to be a new movie set in Italy by Kenneth Branagh, inspired by Halloween Party. It will be called Assassino a Venezia, A Haunting in Venice. But this is not the end, because Christie's legacy lives on. I can tell you that I, together with a friend of mine, Davide Astegiano, have been following the Read Christie, the challenge that the official Agatha Christie account on Instagram, the Agatha Christie Ltd account, has created since 2019. And there's been 100 of readers that have participated every single time, only from Italy. And every single month we meet and we speak of her novels, her works, and there's really a sense of belonging, of reverence even. So I can clearly say that Christie's legacy here in Italy is not bound to disappear. And we will be reading her novels and watching the movies that came up from her novels and her stories for quite a long time. Apart from this, I've said that earlier in this video, there was a very early occurrence of Christie's name in the newspapers here in Italy. And you can imagine which occurrence it was. It was 1926, the famous period of time where she disappeared. Here you can see a paper that I managed to find that describes the founding of Agatha Christie at Harrogate. Even though her novels were still not published here in Italy, her name reached the place. And this is just to show that Agatha Christie's name was big back in the day, even before that Italy actually had any of her novels published in the Italian language. This really shows the legacy that Christie created from day one, and I'm sure that, as we did for the last 100 years, we will be reading her novels for the next 100 years, whether they will be in English or in translation. And I'm sure that the more translation we will receive here in Italy, the more the interest around Agatha Christie will just increase. I do hope you have enjoyed this little journey through the Bel Paese, seen through Agatha Christie's point of view. As you might have grasped, a video is not the perfect medium to illustrate just how intricate and interesting is the relationship between Agatha Christie, Italy and its people, not to talk about how the beginning of her career in Italy was shrouded in mystery, full of twists and turns, just like one of her novels. If you have any inquiries, if you have any doubts, if you want to share your opinion in regards of the topic, don't forget to leave a comment under this video. I will try to answer all of your queries. In the meantime, buona lettura!